So the goal tonight, though, is to do a talk that speaks for the diehard sports fan, the casual sports fan, and Sam. If we can do that, then we'll do our thing. Now, I'll tell you guys, I grew up an absolute diehard sports fan, a sports obsessive. I grew up in New York City in the 1980s, and my heroes were the stars of that time. My room was like a shrine to people like Darryl Strawberry, Keith Hernandez, Lawrence Taylor. I didn't know at the time they all had serious cocaine problems. No, seriously, looking back, my room, it was like the Tony Montana All-Stars in my room, just a shrine to the great drug imbibers of the 1980s. But and I played sports, as David said. I played baseball. I was the starting center for my high school basketball team. We really sucked. No, I was 5'10", the fighting Quakers, we were called. It's not something that's going to bring fear into the hearts of the masses. Oh no, it's the Quakers. That was us. I pretty much played every sport except golf, which is not a sport. No, I'm sorry, and I'm sure it's a fine skill, but this is just my own sort of personal metric, because there's always that sort of parlor debate about what is or is not a sport. And where I stand, if you can either gain weight or smoke cigarettes while doing it, it's not a sport. It's a good way of conceiving it. Like softball, a sport. Beer league softball with a keg on every base, not so much. And I never gave much thought to the politics of sports. That was not something that would have made any sense to me. I mean, I was too busy memorizing statistics and following games and reading the sports page. But that really changed for me in 1996. I was in college, and there was a basketball player for the Denver Nuggets named Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. And Rauf made the private decision that he was not going to come out before games for the national anthem. And this went on for 2 or 3 games before anybody really noticed. And then an enterprising young reporter heard about it and went to him in the locker room and said, "Why aren't you coming out for the national anthem before games?" And Rauf said, in front of the camera, he said, I'm just not comfortable with the combination of that kind of patriotism in a sporting event. I'm not comfortable with that all mixed together like that and being a part of it. And the reporter said to him, "But don't you realize that flag is a symbol of freedom and democracy throughout the world?" And you got to watch the videotape of this, because Rauf has a look on his face like, should I say something? I think I'm going to say something. And he says, well, it may be a symbol of freedom and democracy for some, but it's a symbol of oppression and tyranny to others. Now, when he said that, it was like the sports shit hit the fan. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, ESPN was like, Rauf spits on the flag, booyah, din-in-it, din-in-it. And I remember, in these prehistoric, pre-internet days, we would rush to the dorm and find out what the latest was happening with the Rauf story for the 7 p.m. Sports Center.
You're a hard act to follow, dude.
Barsamian. Give it up for Barsamian. This is the man right here. I mean, how many people, their first radical experience was getting some thin Noam Chomsky book when they were a teenager, and it's like David Barsamian's name is on there too, and you're like, whoa, who's the cool guy Chomsky's talking to? And that's you.
Well, I want to thank you very much for that, but I want to talk to you about what you said about the neoliberal Trojan horses and stadiums and welfare for the rich and using sports as the vehicle, because I was a diehard Brooklyn Dodger fan. And a certain banker, thank you, Walter F. O'Malley, lives in infamy in the hearts of not just Brooklynites, but many people across the country. Yeah. And I know there's a fabulous joke you tell about a Brooklyn Dodger fan.
Oh man, my dad told me this joke. And my dad tells awful jokes, God. But this one has kind of stayed with me. He said, what do you do if you have Hitler, Stalin, and Walter O'Malley, and your gun only has 2 bullets? And he says, you shoot O'Malley twice to make sure the bastard's dead. So that's it. Classy, right? That's it.
Now, it was, for those few of you who don't know, it was O'Malley who engineered the move of the Dodgers to Los Angeles, to a site that was a very thriving community, Chavez Ravine.
Yep.
Talk about that.
Yeah, Chavez Ravine, it was known as the poor man's paradise. I mean, it was just this beautiful stretch of Los Angeles where a Chicano community developed of people, and the descriptions of Chavez Ravine are just unbelievable, like very communitarian living, open doors, families helping each other, taking care of each other. I mean, the kind of living that you don't really see much in the United States. And it's just an amazing place. And what they did was the Dodgers had their sights on this land. They'd already moved to Los Angeles. They wanted this land. They were playing at a different stadium at the time.
Coliseum.
The Coliseum, that's right. And so what first happened was that there was a movement by the city council that was very popular among the people of Los Angeles to take out Chavez Ravine and turn it into public housing. And this was like very sort of like this New Deal idea, like we're going to create quality homes for working men and women in the post-war era, like just with a lot of that kind of New Deal feeling to it. Then once the people of Chavez Ravine were cleared out, and by the way, cleared out very brutally, what happened was that the organizers of the public housing campaign were all called out in front of HUAC and the McCarthy people, the House Un-American Activities Committee. And some of them were thrown in prison, a lot of them had their lives ruined, and then the land was bare. And it was, what are we going to do with the land? So this is going to sound very familiar to modern stadium stories, but what they did was a referendum. And these lovely referendums, well funded by the people who wanted the stadium. And one of the key players in this referendum was someone you might have heard of named an ambitious failed actor named Ronald Reagan. And Reagan actually recorded a record that was distributed for free, where...
Because no one would buy it.
No one would buy it. I mean, and Ronald Reagan, his message was, will Southern California be a part of America? And you got to think about everything that statement means about will Southern California be part of America. It's like, will people like the Chavez Ravine people be the ones who live here? Will the communists be here creating public housing? Or will we have baseball with lots of dingers and whatnot? And that was considered at the time to be a very important record and very important move, and it passed by the narrowest of margins. And today, that's still, to this day, that's Dodger Stadium is in Chavez Ravine.
And that neighborhood was destroyed.
The neighborhood was destroyed, and there still are people who say, will go out there, and I've interviewed them, and they say, hey, do you know where my home was? It's second base.